Good evening, everyone. So thank you for making it to our April's Mentoring Matters talk. And I'll run through the agenda with you. I'll spend about 4 or 5 minutes for the introduction part and a little bit about the Mentoring Club. For those of you who are not yet familiar with the Mentoring Club, we tried to squeeze the content as much as possible because we have regular mentors and mentees and community members that frequent our sessions, but we want to be able to also have new people get to know us a little bit when they join us. And then Carol will have the bulk of the time for tonight from 6:35 or thereabouts to 5 minutes before the end of the session. She will talk about our topic, luck is not a strategy for success. And then after that, we will have some announcements so that you're familiar with the other events and activities that we have for mentors and mentees and all our community members. Just a quick plug on our presence in social media. Please make sure that you follow us. Please make sure that you follow us on these channels. The newest one being Clubhouse. If you'd like to, and I'll talk about our activities and our rooms on Clubhouse during the announcement segment. But if you'd like to see the videos of past events that we've had, please go to our YouTube channel and follow that so you can get updated on what's published. I'm bringing this up front, my gratitude to all the people who have helped us get this event going for over a year now. So it always takes a village to get things done. Idea is good, but the execution is always is difficult. And without the help of these people, then this would not be possible. So thank you, everyone. You know who you are, and for those people who are not very familiar, these are names that you can actually get connected to as you interact with the community. And who is the Mentoring Club? We are a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to provide a mentoring community for aspiring and seasoned leaders. And we are a global community. So anywhere in the world, we want to help working people find mentors who can guide them to develop the skills they need to achieve their career and life goals. And we want to help mentees fulfill their goals by finding meaningful work in order for them to create positive impact in the world. And the ultimate dream is that as mentees become leaders, that they also become mentors to others. These are some of our mentees in the community and some of our generous mentors, just again recognizing that they make up the Mentoring Club. And FYI on skills development areas that our mentee population have expressed that they need help on. So if you are new, you're attending our session for the first time, if you can relate to having a need to develop any of these skills, then you are in good company. And there are others, there are like 99 skills that we have specified in the platform, and these are just some of them. So if it's not here, feel free to connect with me and we will figure out if we have the right mentors for you. And I'd also like to share our leadership core values. So we would like to attract people who more or less believe in the same values that we do. We're cultivating these values as part of our culture. So the first three, integrity, honesty, commitment, I believe are what make us trustworthy as individuals and professionals. Vision and execution are what make us successful leaders. Humanity, contentment, family are the social grounding forces that make us happy and make us feel successful as well as human beings. And with that, I will turn over the floor to Carol. So normally I really don't read any bios for our speakers. I want them to introduce themselves, but I'll just share with you how I met Carol. When I was setting up the mentoring club in 2016, I met her at a presentation in the Palo Alto Lean-In. And then she was presenting at a Women in Technology conference at that time. So I met her at the hotel. I followed up with her after meeting her in the evening during the Palo Alto Lean-In, and then met her in San Jose and told her about the mentoring club. And she has been very supportive since then. Last year, we worked on an opportunity to apply for a grant for Equality Can't Wait in order to propel women of color to positions of power and influence. And we're still looking for funding for that. So hopefully I will have the privilege to work more with Carol in the coming years as we move that forward. So Carol, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks for coming tonight. I enjoy mentoring. It's one of my favorite things to do. That's even one of the reasons I got into leadership. I started working for Lockheed Martin when I was 19. I became a manager at 23 and moved around within the ranks and moved around within the different manufacturing, product assurance, and engineering groups. Finally ended up in Washington State at the Strategic Weapons Facility Pacific. I had 430 employees. We service the missiles that go inside the submarines and do all the calibration for the submarine. I loved my job. I loved all the folks that I had. Started mentoring people when I was 23. I had 105 cable assemblers. They all wanted to do something more with their lives. I started meeting with them and talking about what is it they wanted for their careers. I was able to get classes and some other opportunities for them. To measure success, at the end of my first year as a leader, I lost 100 people. They all got promoted to other jobs. So I had to hire 100 people. So that is the downside to mentoring your folks and, helping them to move on, is you have to keep getting new ones and developing them. So in my 36-year career at Lockheed Martin, I ended up mentoring about 3,000 employees that worked for me. And I also mentored about 1,000 leaders that were up-and-comers in the company, helping them to be better leaders and how to get ahead. Legal asked if I would talk about putting together a 5-year plan. And so I'd like to give you some tips from what I learned. I'm working in a highly white male organization. What is your dream job? What is your passion? Are you going to go on your current path, or you want to take a new path? Have you thought about strategic considerations in your field? What might be some issues and concerns that you should be aware of? How do you pick a future? And then once you've picked the future, what's needed? Dream job. Ooh, I love this one. You talk about what you want to be when you grow up. It doesn't matter how old you are. I ask that question to everybody, no matter what their age. For me, I wanted to be a starship captain, and I had to think about, well, what was it about that job that made it appealing to me? And one was it was a leader. 2, it was someone that was at a remote location and had authority over the group that they had. So wanting to be the resident director of the Strategic Weapons Facility Pacific was very much and very close to becoming a starship captain. It fit my profile of my passion, and so that was the goal I set for myself. It took 23 different jobs before I finally got to that job. So when someone comes in today who's a new employee and I say, what is it you want to be when you grow up? And they look at me and they say, well, I want to be in your job. And I'll say, okay, let's go figure out what the 23 jobs are between your job and my job. I started hourly on the floor building microelectronics. I ended up becoming a leader and moving through a lot of different manufacturing, product assurance, and engineering organizations to broaden my background. So you're looking at the next 5 years. What's exciting to you? What do you read? What do you watch? What do you look at on TV? What are your hobbies? Is there a way to find the passion that you have and find a job that can feed that passion? What do you love? Do you love people? Do you love isolation? Do you love technical things? Do you love art? What are the kinds of things that make you feel accomplished when you get something done and you feel like, wow, that was great. I'm so glad I got that done. Or are you saying, oh, I finally got it over with. I really didn't want to do it, but I did get it done, because we all do things we don't like. What gives you that sense of accomplishment? Do you feel like what you're doing today matters? Some people need that kind of incentive in their life, is to feel like what they're doing makes a difference. If that's what you're looking for, you want to try to plan that out in your 5 and 10-year plan. What characteristics does your passion and dream job have with your real world? And that's where you have to translate becoming a starship captain to what would that look like in the real world? Well, obviously becoming a leader, being able to affect the group that you have, being able to set the culture, ability to teach your leaders to mentor everybody, helping to develop employees. In my organization at the Strategic Weapons Facility, I promoted 30% of the jobs that I opened, we promoted from within, which meant the people that were working on the shop floor, the people that were doing paperwork, if they wanted to do more, they wanted to become something more, they could go from being a warehouse worker to an IT professional, which I had one of my guys do. Jack Hawley went to school at night and became an IT professional, and he started off working in the warehouse. By developing your people, it also motivates them. You have a nice group of people that are motivated because they feel like somebody cares about their career. So those are important things to do. Is your job for money and your volunteer work your passion? It's one of the things you have to see and do. I know people who do jobs because it makes really, really good money, but the passion they have is really in the volunteer work that they do. If you recognize that, then what's your 5-year plan in your volunteer work? Are you going to open a mentoring club and grow it and help lots of people succeed? Then that's your passion, and that's your 5-year plan. Do you look forward to going to work? Anybody out there not look forward to going to work? One of the objectives I had for my teams whenever I had them was I wanted people to want to come to work, that really felt like it mattered if they came to work. What satisfaction are you getting from the job that you're in? Do you see yourself growing in the field that you're in? I had some guys that really loved being calibration techs, but yeah, I could send them to classes to learn other kinds of calibrations and to become a better technician and learn new equipment. Do you want to be a leader, or do you want to stay technical? That's usually one of the big questions that gets asked during your career is, are you going to move into a leadership role, or do you stay in your technical field? And you need to understand, just because you think leaders get paid more, that's where you think you should go. Leadership is not always what you think it is, and it's not an easy job. And you have to love leading people, and you have to love developing people if you want to go into leadership. And there are a lot of technical fields where you can move up within the technical field and even become a fellow and a PhD. Are you stuck in a job you hate? Are you stuck doing things you don't want to do? You want to start over? Well, let's lay out a plan. Let's lay out a plan to start over. Where do you want to go? What do you want to be? I had microelectronics workers who went to school and became nurses, that went to school and became EMTs, police officers, all kinds of things. They were able to move on to a different job in a completely different field. Are you willing to move outside your comfort zone? One of the things I tell the people I'm mentoring is, if you're not a little bit of afraid, you're probably not pushing yourself to learn. If you stay in the safe spots all the time, it's usually because you already know how to do it. Challenge yourself. Make yourself a little bit uncomfortable by doing some things you've never done before. Self-inventory, that's one of the first things you want to do in putting together your resume, is doing a self-inventory of what are all of your skill sets. I do recommend Myers-Briggs. It's a good test, and it talks about kind of what your personality is like and what the kinds of things that would make you happy in your job. So I really recommend taking the Myers-Briggs. There's a free test online if you want to take that. Understand, do you have emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is a real key, especially if you're working in groups of people and there's a lot of different hierarchy and a lot of negotiation going on, a lot of discussions between people. Do you have the emotional intelligence that it takes to understand the people that are around you and work with them to get the best outcomes? What's your temperament? Are you quick to anger, or are you someone who is a jokester? Are you basically even-tempered? Understand yourself, understand your personality, really understand your innate talents. Some people, my younger sister is just a wonderful artist. She can just draw and paint and do anything she wants. Some people have innate skills and talents, and hopefully some of those things could be used in your career field if you're looking for it. What are your social skills? I tend to be an introvert, so I really admire people that are really have good social skills, that are extroverts, that can do social networking like water running off a duck. I mean, they just love it. It's something that I have to work at, and just because you have to work at it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You need to force yourself, if you're an introvert, to do the things you need to do for the job that you want to have. Gain the social skills you need, gain the communication skills you need. You want to know how you can tell if you're an introvert or an extrovert. If you're an introvert, you get rest and energized when you're alone. If you're an extrovert, you get energized when you're with people. Real easy to tell whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. Now I want to talk about one of the things that doesn't get talked about a lot is what are the strategic considerations in the field that you're in. Are you in a technology that's old? Are you in a technology that's going to go away? If that's the case, how old are you? Is your technology that you're in and your expertise that you have going to last for enough years that you can retire? Or is the technology you're working in going to go away? Building missiles for 36 years. I've seen a lot of change in technology. I think we've got a Blue Origin person here tonight. She also has seen a lot of the new technologies. You need to understand what's happening and what's coming down the pipe. The way I keep up on what's going on with technology is I try to subscribe to different companies in LinkedIn, and they usually have advertisements of the kinds of technologies that they're doing and the kinds of things that they're developing. Cheddar is a good site. He tends to put a lot of stuff up on new technologies and how things work. Think about refreshing your skills. Do you need to learn how to do 3D printing? Do you need how to do technology in the computer? Do you need to know how to use different computer programs? You need to follow social media and news feeds and understand what's going on out there so that you don't get outdated. You don't get caught unaware and say, oh, what do you mean we're no longer going to have gasoline engines? What do you mean I'm not going to be able to have a gas station anymore because everybody's going to have electric vehicles? Be thinking about the technologies that are coming and how that's going to change how you're doing business. I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday about how we used to make the electronic packages, the boxes that the electronics go in. We used to take a hunk of aluminum and we would hog it out and then machine it and make the chassis. Well, this last week, they did the first 3D printed chassis. It was a test to see if they could do it, and it did beautifully. So now the whole machine shops aren't even needed anymore. So if you knew CNC and you knew all the different kinds of machining, and it may completely go away with the whole advent of 3D printing. Think about what your job is and how is it relevant going forward. Keep up on what's going on with industry. Think about what is it your customers want. Are your customers changing what they're wanting through time? And are your products and services meeting those needs and meeting those new desires that your customers will have? Think about what your assumptions are. Are any of your assumptions no longer valid? If you think that something's going to be stable for the next 20 years and it's actually going to get phased out in the next 5, what are your assumptions? What are your possible futures? Think about where are you going? What are you doing? If you're mentoring young people, especially, when my nephew was going to college, he was taking IT classes to become an IT professional. And I said, if you've got any extra credits that you need to pick up, I said, take a 3D printing class and take a artificial intelligence class. I gave the same advice to a student in Colorado University who was getting his law degree. He took a class in AI, and it completely made him rethink about how many attorney services can actually perform by an artificial intelligence application, and it would totally eliminate some of the jobs that lawyers are doing today. So think about how that plays out into the future. What are issues and concerns? What are your fears? Are you afraid to step into new ground? Are you afraid to have to try to learn something? Is what you're doing safe? Are you doing things that are not good for you long term? Are you working with the chemicals, and are you working with things that are hazardous or will become hazardous tomorrow who aren't hazardous today? I had a lot of guys in the shops that used to clean parts with MEK, which is a liquid cleaner, and I would always be telling them to put their gloves on and put their safety glasses on, and they're like, nah, they would just dip the rag in the bucket full of solvent and wipe down the piece of hardware, and I'd have to force them to put gloves on. So think about safety issues. Think about whether the work you're doing could be a problem for you later. What are your legal issues or changes? Do you have intellectual property? Do you have ideas? Before you talk to people about your ideas, always make sure you do a non-disclosure agreement. My student that was getting his law degree came up with a really, really cool idea, and he wanted to share with me. And I said, no, I don't want you to do that. What I want you to do is write a non-disclosure agreement first, send that to me, and then after that, we can talk. I said, and you need to do that with anybody you talk about that idea with, because you can lose your intellectual property. If you come up with a good idea and you're just bubbling over wanting to share it, just remember, without a non-disclosure agreement, they can take your idea and take it to market, and you're left in the dust. What are the risks in your job and in your field? Are you a police officer? Are you a fire person, fireman? Are you EMT? Especially now, you want to be a nurse with the age of COVID. That's a whole different story today. What's the competition? Where's the competition heading? Everybody thought that the rocket motor industry was pretty much locked up by Lockheed and Boeing, and it was pretty much, that's how it was going to be forever. And then now you get these new up-and-comers like Blue Origin and SpaceX who have come in and captured a huge part of the market because they were willing to just go build the rockets and say, hey, if I build them, somebody will need them. Where Lockheed and Boeing had the philosophy of, we don't build it till you buy it. That huge change in competition, that huge paradigm shift really took a lot of work away from Boeing and Lockheed. Is the technology that you're working in becoming obsolete? I was talking to my nephew who got a job at a car dealership, and he's selling car parts for gasoline engines. And I said, 20 years from now, do you think you'll still have that job? Because there's a whole different industry for taking care of electric vehicles. They don't have as many technical issues that gasoline engines have. That particular job where he makes money based on what he sells, how many parts he sells, is going to become obsolete. Pay scales. Have you thought about what job you're going into and what the pay scales are? Look at all the different technologies and what they're getting paid, and ask yourself, is that enough to meet my needs? Is that enough to do what I want to do? If I want to buy a house, if I want to have a family, take a look at the pay scales when you're picking your jobs. Ethics. Is the field you're in ethical, or are you working with some slippery people who kind of hedge around the rules? I actually quit a job because of ethics, because I didn't like the way my boss was acting and behaving and not following the rules. And so I said, I'm going to go find another job somewhere else. Think about how ethics affects you and whether or not you got to change jobs because of that. As you're picking your future and you're typically looking up a ladder saying, I want the next job that's on the ladder that I'm on. What I have found over time, that if you build a pyramid versus a ladder, your career is much more solid. At each level within the Lockheed organization, I would do 2 or 3 different jobs over the years and go to the next level and then go do 2 or 3 of those and then go to the next level and then go to the next level. So by the time I got to the top level, I had a lot of background, which made it real easy for me to ask all the right questions, to understand the technical issues. So by building a pyramid rather than a ladder is much more stable. The other thing that happens when you just look straight up a ladder is that you're waiting for the person above you to leave. I was mentoring a woman that worked in Lockheed Sunnyvale, and she was in product assurance, and I looked at the jobs around her and I thought, oh man, these guys are all going to work till they die. I asked her, I said, are you waiting for someone to die to get a manager job? She thought about it. And after she picked her job off the table, she said, yeah, you're right. You need to think about applying for jobs outside of the organization that you're in. and not wait for somebody to die. And she did, and she competed for 2 different jobs, and she got the second job. Build a pyramid, don't just go up a ladder. What's needed if you want to succeed in your 5-year plan? One is continually learning. You always need to be learning new technologies and new fields of endeavor. I took a job with systems planning and analysis, helping with the design of the next Trident missile. I found that I needed to start learning some things because they were heading in a digital direction where they were going to have all digital design. They were going to have all model-based engineering. They were going to have a digital twin. Well, guess what? I had to learn about all those things to stay relevant and be able to talk to the engineers that are designing the missile. Think about what's going on, and are you continually learning? There's no end. Just getting your degree does not mean you stop having to learn to stay relevant. You need to keep your resume updated as you learn new things, as you take classes, as you take development assignments. You want to make sure you keep your resume current and up to speed with where you're at. Research your next job or your job path. Take a look at what are the jobs adjacent to your job, what are the jobs above you. Take a look at 2 or 3 different ones so that when you lay out your plan, you've got options of 2 or 3 different jobs versus just working on that one job above you. Always make sure you select and request a mentor sponsor. I actually recommend that you have 3 mentors. One is a mentor sponsor, which is someone who can affect what kinds of job assignments you have and can help advocate to get you promoted. You need a work mentor, technical mentor, someone in your work environment that understands the politics and who understands the technology that you're working in and can give you advice on what you can do to develop yourself. And the third is someone who's an advocate, somebody who can encourage you, somebody who can encourage you when you get to the point where you think, oh my God, I'm never going to get there from here. Somebody who believes in you. Somebody believing in you really makes a big difference. I had mentors who believed I could do things I did not believe I could do, and they were right. If they hadn't believed in me and pushed me, I probably wouldn't have been where I was at the end of my career. You need to find that kind of mentor. You need to do a gap analysis. Once you've determined, here's the 2 or 3 different jobs I'm looking at going into, what are the requirements? Getting a job description, get a requirement. Talk with managers about what's needed in that job, what kind of social skills, what kind of communication skills. Do you need to be able to make good presentations? Do you need to be able to do good Excel spreadsheets? Do you need budget experience? Do you need scheduling experience? Or what is it that's needed? What are the gaps? And you start working on those gaps so that when you start competing for jobs, you'll be ready to take on those jobs and succeed. One of the things that I've seen is women and minorities tend not to apply for a job until they get 100% of the requirements, where others will start applying when they have, 50 to 60% of the requirements. If you're holding back applying for jobs, think about that and think about if that's really the smart thing to do, because you don't have to have 100% to get the job. Make sure you have a development plan, something that you've negotiated with your boss. You want to make sure that you get commitment for any kind of training classes that you want to go to get any kind of conferences that you might need to go to, and get support in that arena. If you want to do special assignments, if you want to get some leadership skills, you want to be able to be assigned to sit in for leaders when they're on vacation. Think about that development plan and lay it out and get a commitment from your boss. Work-life balance. You always need to be thinking about how you need to balance your work life. Some people can travel. Some people have trouble traveling because of home commitments or health issues. I had some health issues and some disabilities, so it made it hard for me to travel. So I had to try to balance that with my work life, find ways to be able to travel. One of the things I did early on when technology was starting was to get a BlackBerry. Before they were actually giving BlackBerries to people at the manager level, they were only giving them to vice presidents. I turned in an ADA accommodation and asked for a BlackBerry because I couldn't carry the laptop in the airport. It was too difficult for me to do. So think about if you've got issues, there's ADA accommodations. There's ways of getting employers to help with different things, the right chair, the right workspace, travel and commuting. Not so much up here, but down in California, I spent 20 years. So you go 6 miles in 40 minutes. Here you go 6 miles in 6 minutes. So you got to think about where you're at and what's the commute, what's the travel time, how much time are you spending traveling. And then, of course, now virtual jobs I think are fantastic. I actually have a virtual job. I work from my desk at home. I work for a company that's in Washington, D.C. I think there's a lot more opportunity now for virtual jobs and being able to use your skills for other companies and still be able to work from home or even be able to work from the beach. Sometimes I park my car on the beach and set up my computer, and that's my office for the day. Isn't Wi-Fi wonderful? Don't rely on luck. That is not a strategy for success. A lot of people think that if they work hard and they just keep their nose clean, that they'll get promoted. That's usually not the case. You need to advocate for yourself. You need to ask for development. You need to take a look at what's needed to get that next job and start trying to work on getting those skill sets in your resume so that when a job opens up and the opportunity arises, you're the most qualified candidate. That's how you win. And that's how I won 23 different jobs. I love it. So here's my contact information. If you need to get a hold of me for any reason, my website, my email, my phone number, feel free to contact me. And I'd love questions, so please ask some questions.
Hey, Carol, this is Thomas. One of the things you said that stuck with me the most was, just because you're not good at something doesn't mean you should work at it. I think that's, something I have to remind myself as constantly. And I think a lot of humans start to think that whatever they're good at is most important. And I really couldn't agree more with your comment there. I was wondering if you could share maybe some specific examples of things that you've focused on, not just being an extrovert, the introvert versus extrovert, but other maybe hard skills even, or whatever you can think of that shows that like, all right, I know I have to work on this.
Yeah, my hardest skill was public speaking, and I hated it. And when I was in high school, I actually took an F for the speech that we were supposed to give that year because I wouldn't get up in front of the class and talk. And so when I started working for Lockheed and I knew I was going to have to give presentations, I signed up for a speech class at the college. And it was just awful. And the very first presentation that I made at Lockheed, I had one of those pointers that's this big long wooden stick. We didn't have lasers back then. And so I went to point at something on the screen and the stick flew across the room because I was so nervous. And my boss was sitting in the front row. So I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. So I really hated to give presentations. And now I do it because I want people to learn from what I've learned. And so if you're going to do that, you're going to have to give presentations. You don't really have a choice. So you start having to work at it and get good at it. And so that's how it goes. I think another was I'm not a writer. Naturally, I'm not a natural born writer. I had a friend growing up that was just a natural born writer. Her name was Janet Dale, and she just was unbelievable. She could just sit down and write and write and write. And I didn't have that skill set. So sometimes you have to look for, well, then what can you do to help yourself with that skill set? What I am good at is talking about different subjects, just straight from my head and impromptu speaking. When I was getting ready to retire and I wanted to train my leaders to be the next group of leaders, I started having lunchtime sessions every other week for an hour at lunch. And so what I did was I picked 39 subjects for development, and I spoke on those 39 subjects over the 2 years that I had to go in my job. I had my training organization videotape them. And so I took those videotapes and had them transcribed. And then I used those transcriptions to actually write my 2 books. Sometimes you have to figure out ingenious ways of getting there from
life
here.
hack. It's a good life hack.
So Carol, you mentioned your 2 books. So I just realized, I have it right the back shelf that I have. So this is for the mentees, right? So
that one's for the mentees.
This is for the mentees, and this is for the managers. So
right.
And remind me again, what's the 3rd book?
The 3rd book was written for veterans.
Veterans, yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that I don't have. But yes, I found the books so easy to read because they're very practical. It actually reflects very much how you approach the whole presentation. It's so smooth in terms of sharing examples and just, simple questions for us to ask ourselves.
We have 2 questions in the chat. The first one from Joey. How do you identify the most important skills you need to learn to be the most qualified candidate?
Typically what you do is you want to sit down with your mentor and go over the requirements for the job. Typically when they do a selection for a job, they will weight the different requirements. So for example, if you're going to become a leader, leadership scores multiplied by 10. Communication skills may be multiplied by 8. Microsoft skills may be multiplied by 3. So if you go over the requirements with your boss and ask, what's emphasized in that next job that I'm looking for, which of the criteria should I be concerned with making sure I work on first so that I get competitive right away? You can also ask the person in the job. I've actually asked people in their job, what do they consider the most important thing in their job? Sometimes you can actually interview the person, especially if somebody's going to retire and you want to talk to them and say, hey, I just want to find out what you think is the most important skill set for your job because I want to compete for your job when you retire. And that's not a threat to them because they've got the job.
So my question is on work and life balance. I find that because I always feel like if I'm asking for time off, even though it's like, you deserve vacation, in situations where like you're working with like short staff, it almost I feel guilty as if it takes away from my hard work towards that next promotion or position. So how do I reconcile that feeling of guilt with the fact that this is my deserved time off? It's okay to take it, and it doesn't take away from the fact that I still deserve by virtue of hard work and to get to that next level.
What I like to do was to negotiate with the team you're in, where you can talk about it amongst yourselves and say, let's plan out the summer for vacation, or let's plan out the winter for vacation. And you get out the calendar and you put it up on the wall, and you start talking to each other about, well, I'm thinking I want to take this week. And another person says, well, I'm thinking I want to take this week. And if you actually talk about it, and everybody negotiates where they want to put their vacation, you also then don't have overlap. So if you've got short, you don't have a huge amount of staff and it's really hard for the team to cover when you're on vacation, one of the things that really works is to have a joint vacation schedule up on the wall. It also is then expected that you're going to go on vacation in 2 weeks, and the person knows and says, oh, I know you're going to go on vacation in 2 weeks. Do you have this information before you leave or whatever? So by having this team calendar, vacation becomes a team sport and not just an individual. And if someone's not taking vacation, you can put a little social pressure on them to make them take vacation. I had a real problem with managers not wanting to take vacation. So I brought them into my office and I said, okay, you guys all are been here a long time. You all get 4 weeks vacation a year. I said, I want your plan by January, when you're going to take your 4 weeks. And if you don't have a plan, then I'm going to be calling your spouse and finding out what their plan is for you.
Yeah. I want to add something. I want to add something important to that. Years ago, when I was at Sun Microsystems, I worked on a project, and the consultants on that project was McKinsey, and these people work extremely hard. I mean, if you can imagine, they bill their hours, they are under a lot of pressure. And the story that went around among the consultants was that McKinsey made a study of who made it to partner within McKinsey. And there was no clear conclusion, except that all those who made partners all took all their vacations. The other ones didn't, but all those who made it to partners took all their vacation, no exception, right? So, and they don't know why, and they basically speculated that those who took all their vacations are very good at organizing or something. They just speculated. There's no conclusion, but they speculated that those are extremely good at organization, and that's why they made it.
Yeah,
so just a comment there.
Yeah, vacation is important, and when you become a leader, you want to encourage your people to plan their vacations. And everybody have a plan together. We used to plan out overtime and we used to plan out vacation. So we tried to balance what needed to get done and how we could do it, but still have lives at the same time.
Joanne, I'm not sure if you if you're currently employed, if it's with a big company or a small firm or what, but most big companies have upper limits on the number of hours of vacation time that a person is allowed to save up.
Mm-hmm.
For those people who always are somewhat insecure about when to take their own vacation, they'll run into that upper limit of hours, and then it's a sort of a use it or lose it. And so I've had it happen that there are some people who they'll come to me and they'll say, John, I want to take, or John, I have to take vacation. If I don't, I'll lose the hours. And so now that's perhaps the weakest excuse, but it's still a valid excuse. And I'm just pointing that out, is that you don't have to wait until you're at the maximum balance.
So our company actually has taken away all the vacations, and they say that pandemic time people may need more time off, and so they call it flexible time off. So supposedly you can ask as many days as you want, but I think the opposite is actually happening. That, oh shoot, I'm afraid I might take too much time because people is gonna find out I'm asking time off. I think it's having an adverse effect actually for employees.
Yeah.
Sharon, you're perfectly correct. Some people call that the Netflix effect, because Netflix has had that policy for many years, and they find that the junior people especially are almost paranoid that if they take a vacation, it's down that or and Carol, you made your comment about the calendar. That calendar makes a lot of sense for operational environments. When you're in other environments, it's okay often for 2 or 3 people to even take a break at the same time. They're just plain nervous. Inside Netflix, they're too nervous.
And I feel like it's actually really unhealthy for us, because I understand the saving is more like on the operational end for the company, but for employees like us who's being at home for a long period of time, the hours are getting longer, not shorter. And
right,
I don't know what to do with it, actually, to be honest.
Yeah,
But my management is very supportive. He said, you guys need time off, just take time off. But for other groups, they may not be so lucky. They could always say, oh, customer escalation, we have chip shortage, you guys got to work harder.
I can comment to that as well. For a long time, I've been a project manager. So the project managers want you to keep working, of course. Okay. However, even project managers, they want to be predictable. So they don't want you to just come in and say, I need to take vacation, right? They want to plan it out. So just plan it out and they can deal with it. But otherwise, if your work is used up by some other project managers and not your direct manager, the thing is this: if you don't take vacation, the company owes you money. It's on the books. The company is liable for that, and they don't like it. So if your direct manager is not a work manager, they rather you take the vacation rather than manage somebody to whom the company is liable to, and they don't like that. Just an input, yeah.
Thanks, Hong. So I just talking about managers and also mentors. I saw a question that was asked twice, and I think John, this is the question that you wanted to ask earlier. So I think Carol, you can start off with this in terms of sharing your thoughts. What are your thoughts on finding mentors within the workplace versus mentors outside?
I think it really depends on what your 5-year plan is. Who's going to be the best mentor to help you get to that 5-year plan? If you're moving up within the company, you probably want someone that knows kind of the politics. You also want somebody that's a sponsor and can affect getting you maybe the special assignments you need to get the experience on your resume. If you're deciding you want to go into a different career field, then obviously you're going to have to find a mentor outside where you're working. I had a woman at Boeing that was working on the airplanes, and she just didn't feel like she was making a contribution to the world and the company and stuff, and she really wasn't satisfied in that job. So I said, well, then what do you want to do? And she says, well, I want to design Moon and Mars habitat. And so we looked to see who taught that in the college. She went to Arizona University and changed her degree field. And she also, we looked up people who were writing white papers on that subject and contacted them to find out if they would mentor her. She got some mentors that were in that field. So it really is driven by where you want to go. Obviously, depending on where you go, you want the person that knows the ropes and knows the roads to tell you where to go and where to turn and what to watch out for.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that.
I'd like to follow up with a question for Carol. This is my experience, so I just wanted your take on it because you have a ton more experience. My experience is this: to advance within the company, then clearly you want an insider mentor because that's who can navigate you up the, not the ladder, the pyramid or whatever, right? I would think so. Now, the thing is, increasingly, companies are, how would I say, are less, are more at risk. So your career is the whole field, not within your company. So you do need a mentor on the outside to navigate on the outside that you don't know, and your mentors on the inside won't know. So you do want to have an external mentor to navigate outside, and some mentors inside for advancement within the career, within the company. Can you comment on that? Because that's my own experience. I don't know if that can be generalized.
There are some fields that jobs depend on competitions and which companies win those competitions. And if you're in a field where you're building something that's being used across the industry and there's competition going on between companies, you want to know other people in other companies, because if your company doesn't win the competition, you want to be able to jump to the company that did win the competition. And so by having advocates in different companies in your field can be extremely helpful, where the work shifts between companies and who wins the bids from year to year.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Carol, for your time. And so again, I've known Carol for a while now, and she's very much open to anybody contacting her. So what we'll do is we'll share the slides with you after this session, so you have her contact information and you can also reference her materials. And I can also send you the title of her books so that you can look those up. They're really, really very useful. So when I was setting up the mentoring club, those two books that I showed you were part of my research, in addition to the book that I got from Margot Murray. And there was another lady from, I think, Arizona or Utah, who wrote a mentoring book. So let me go ahead and share my screen so that I can update you on what's going on in terms of future events. So some announcements. So for May, we're going to have a 5 to 6 hour workshop, and it's about creating a vision for your future. And this is going to be done by another longtime supporter of the mentoring club, Kimberly Wiffling. She is actually a physicist turned transformational leadership consultant, and she's been doing this consulting work for different countries and small, medium, and big-sized organizations. So we'll have the benefit of her expertise for a Saturday, that's May 22, from 9:30 to 3:30 p.m. And this is going to be on Zoom. The other big thing that we have started, we launched the fundraiser for this year's Give Back Lead Forwards. I was showing the guys earlier, so I'm wearing the shirt from last year. We started this fundraiser in 2020. So really, what are we raising funds for? It's really all about capacity building for now. We are almost like 100% a volunteer run. We just have a few consultants that are receiving stipend. for their services, but we want to be able to raise funds in order to hire our first employees. So please, when I send the slide, please go ahead and check out the event page. The URL is below. Another activity that is new, so we're trying to understand, so this is what Carol is saying, there are new things are happening. So Clubhouse has gained a lot of grounds in the last 2-3 months. And so we have partnered with one of our mentors, Sean Flynn. He created the Silicon Valley Startups Club on Clubhouse, and he created the Mentoring Club Hour. And this is where we tackle topics around leadership development, mentoring. So for next Tuesday, our topic is why is empathy important in leadership? And then for May, we have these topics lined up, and please watch out for those sessions. It's Tuesdays, 5 to 6 p.m. Right now, Clubhouse is only available on iOS devices, but they said they're going to release the Android version in a few weeks. So let's watch out for that. So hopefully the whole community can gather there. So this is just one partnership. We will also create rooms and events under the Mentoring Club on Clubhouse. Too many clubs. And so for the Mentees Circle, this is their next activity. So what we've done this year in order to create a stronger bond within the communities, we created the Mentees Circle and the Mentors Circle. And then there's the Mentors and Leaders Hike, which I will show you later on. So it's really getting to know each other. So it's not just knowing each other because we're helping each other in our professional needs, but at the same time understanding and building that empathy around each other. So they have decided to do a picnic. So this will be in San Jose, California. So I know those people who are in Europe, in Asia, or in other parts of the US will not be able to join. But hopefully when we get bigger, we can create those we can replicate these kinds of activities where we believe, which really supports our core values, right? So of having people around us to support us. So the next Mentors and Leaders Hike, so again, this is in California at the Dish at Stanford, is going to be on May 8th. So what we've done is we've squeezed in the Mentoring Matters talks to just 1 hour. Last year, we were doing it for 2 hours so that we could do networking, but we realized, it's kind of awkward for people to do some networking online. So, and that's also based on community feedback. And so what we've done is, even with the pandemic, we're trying to get together no more than 10 people to do hikes with mentors and mentees, so that mentees can be more comfortable, walking with the mentors and sharing whatever challenges they have. And sometimes it ends up being a group problem solving session for any mentee who is willing to share their situations. And then, of course, again, the theme around wellness and health. For us to be successful leaders, we need to be healthy, and also that will make us happy. So we partnered with one of our mentors, Deepali Sinha, for our practice around yoga and Pilates. So there's Sunday, Monday, and also Wednesday. And for those of you who are new, if the cause, or if you feel that this is a community that you would like to explore further to help you develop yourself as a leader, then please consider becoming a mentee. And for those of you who are wanting to give back, please consider being a mentor. And of course, if you have extra time and would like to help with the cause, please reach out to me for some of the volunteer work that we need to get done. So we have a lot of programs going on, and we could use some extra help. And of course, since we are a nonprofit organization, donations are very much appreciated. As I mentioned, we're still in the capacity building phase. We want to be able to hire our first employee soon. And that's what I have. Oh, last thing is give us the gift of your feedback. You will receive an email from Eventbrite, sent by Eventbrite. And the survey link will be there, but at the same time, this slide deck will be available to you, so you can click on the link here as well. So again, thank you very much for extending your time with us tonight, and I hope you were able to learn a lot of new things to ask yourself. There's really a lot of questions to answer as we plan our lives and our careers. And hopefully, Carol has triggered some things for all of us to think about. Any last words, Carol?
Thank you for letting me share tonight. I really enjoy helping others succeed.
Likewise. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the journey.